So the stats and numbers on the archives in general are 16,000 cubic feet of records. There's 3 miles of shelving, so if you laid every shelf end to end, it would stretch halfway in towards Detroit. The origins of the Bronco actually go back to World War II. Ford built more than 270,000 Jeeps during World War II, and we had a lot of experience in the manufacturing. In fact, the vertical grille that's so iconic with the Jeep was a Ford design. These are the original documents launching the Bronco program. So Ford identified the opportunity to build something that could be both a rugged 4x4 and a highway driver. This is the memo that took the Bronco to the next step, and I love this particular line. I'm reading upside down. But for the development of a Ford utility vehicle, code name Bronco. And it's not very often that a code name extenuates over into the naming of the actual vehicle itself. But there's 3 separate memos, all titled GOAT Semi-Prototype Build. G period, O period, A period, T period. Goes over any terrain. Since the origins of the Bronco were in the Jeep, it had that same mentality. The GIs had all come back from the war calling the Jeeps the goats, and so Ford wanted the goat to be in the DNA of the Bronco from the very beginning. It's cool stuff. Nobody's ever seen this stuff before either. I mean, we don't typically share our executive communications, so we have one of the biggest collections of negatives is 350,000 styling negs from the early 50s all the way through to today. They're from the design center, they're restricted. We typically would never show these off. But pulling out the S-negs like we did this for the design team so that they could see, and they could look for a kernel of the different cars so that the DNA of the current Bronco would reflect the DNA of the previous generations. This is the real heart and soul of the design collection for Ford. We've got the drawings, all the different designs, and all the different clays of the different iterations. So the next section is trim and color, and this is more just lighthearted lark, but naming colors is the sport of kings. Rangoon red, Yuma yellow, sea pine green. It is a highly used collection. This gets used all the time because people will write us and they want to know what color, what the official name was. They want to know if something's going to be repaired. So we'll end up scanning some of the instruction sheets for the restorations. Calypso Blue Roadster. This was your most basic Bronco. This was one that sold the least. And remember too, the Bronco was the younger brother of the Mustang. When it was introduced, Don Fry, who was head of the Ford division at the time, said another pony is joining the corral. So it was always linked directly to the Mustang. The Mustang is the older brother, and just like the Mustang had a low base price and tons of options and accessories, the Bronco had a low base price and tons of options and accessories. The next section is Bronco's racing heritage, but it's amazing that it was so quickly. I mean, Strope was given a pre-production model that he immediately began racing, and just the legacy of the 4x4 being the first overall winner at Baja, winning at Baja in 68 and 69. I always get these. And then Big Ollie came along with Parnelli Jones a few years later and won in 71 and 72. That the racing roots, the off-road cred for the Bronco was immediate. Part of this exhibit was to talk about the Bronco at play and at work, which is really just 2 sides of the same coin. If you're going kayaking in the mountains, you want the Bronco, and it can go off-road with you if you want a police utility vehicle. All generations were modified to be police interceptors, particularly in rural areas in the rough and tumble West. The Bronco could go anywhere and it could do anything, and it became an essential work vehicle. The next fun section is pop culture, and part of that are the things like 1979, Ford Motor Company donated 3 Broncos to the Secret Service that were modified into a Pope Mobile. So you can see Pope John Paul II here in Yankee Stadium. The music that it's appeared in, we only have 2 country albums here, but we've actually created a Spotify playlist that's going to have almost 100 songs where the Broncos either appeared in the video or has appeared in the lyrics. And then who can forget the slow-speed O.J. Simpson chase in his white Bronco? 95 million estimated Americans were watching that chase, cruising the freeways of Los Angeles. Bronco's in the movie, 1,200 listings for Bronco. and some pretty significant ones. Some of my favorite are Independence Day, Ocean's 11. In this particular case, I got the still from Role Models, and we had the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And that goes to speak to the Bronco. It's such an iconic vehicle. When you see the Bronco, you know it. This is an interesting one too. Iceland has one of the biggest concentrations of Broncos of any nation. They've got an active collectors club. So we were advertising Broncos in Iceland from the very beginning. It makes perfect sense. It's rugged, it's a tough landscape. You need a dependable 4x4, and the Broncos work perfectly. And then some of the other fun things in the archives, I described the films, but you can see the film collection. Those would be ad reels, those are motion picture reels, a lot of those are ad compilation reels. We keep it chilled down to 41 degrees. It helps the life expectancy of the film. We're the memory of the Ford Motor Company. That's another one, that's a variation on one of the Broncos. I've scanned 70,000 of them so far. Every one of these boxes is filled with 1,000+ negatives. So this is your 3D objects. In the museum world, you divide everything between 2D, 3D, and moving image. So things like the model of the Henry Ford II that was part of the cruise line. So these are employee ID badges, and you can see during World War II they added photos to them for security reasons. Gear shifts, knobs, badges, cufflinks. One of my favorite items in the collection, the woman's compact with a V8 logo. Wow. I'm glad you guys were able to come and do this, because it goes through the whole reasoning for what the Bronco program is going to be. And essentially it's in between rugged, rough and tumble, and Mustang. Because it really does a great job of telling you the whole Bronco story.